Hi guys, I'm going to recap a 2020 American horror mystery thriller movie, called The Empty Man. This movie tells the story of an urban legend circulating in the community, about a ritual to summon supernatural entities that can take control of a human body. So, what is the ritual and what entity can be summoned? Let's find it out. In 1995, there are 4 climbers, namely Greg, Paul, Ruthie, and Fiona, who are climbing the Ura Valley mountain in Bhutan by passing through a forest and a long worn-down bridge. When they reach the top, Paul hears a strange sound and he doesn't know where it is coming from. Out of curiosity, Paul approaches it at the edge of the cliff. However, suddenly while walking, he falls into a crevice. Greg decides to go down to help. When he arrives, Greg is surprised to see Paul sitting quietly with a blank stare while facing a human skull with a very strange bone structure. The bone seems to have more limbs than human and even wings. When Greg tells him to go upstairs, Paul says, "Don't touch me because you will die." However, Greg ignores the words. When Greg touches him, Paul cries incoherently. On the way, Ruthie sees a house and they decide to go there to get a cover from the snow. When they arrive, Ruthie lays him down and finds a bone that Paul keeps clutching. Evening comes, and Ruthie is sitting holding the bone that Paul held earlier. Surprisingly, Ruthie feels the tendency to blow into the bone. After blowing it, she hears a sound like footsteps even though everyone is asleep. The second day arrives, Greg and Fiona go out looking for help while Ruthie is at home looking after Paul. From the window, Ruthie sees someone standing behind the heavy blizzard. Seeing that, Ruthie runs to him for help. Suddenly, the person chases her back and she runs into the house and locks the door. There is a lot of banging on the door, but it turns out that it is Greg and Fiona. At nightfall, while Ruthie is sleeping, Paul whispers something in her ear like a spell. The next morning, Paul disappears and his footprints are visible outside. They follow the footprints and find him sitting cross-legged as if worshipping something right in front of the bridge they have crossed while blowing into the black bone. Not long after, Ruthie suddenly stabs Greg multiple times and slashes Fiona's neck until they both fall into the ravine. Then, followed by herself, who falls into the abyss. 23 years later, in 2018 in Webster Mills, Missouri, a man named James Lasombra is a former police officer and now works as a security storekeeper. James only lives alone after his wife and child died in an accident because of his mistake. He blames himself very much for their death. One day, James meets his ex-girlfriend's daughter, Amanda, by the pool. Amanda wants to see him, because she empathizes with his condition, as she has lost her father too. Amanda tells him that nothing can hurt us because nothing is real, and convinces him that positive thinking will overpower negativity. Amanda also raises a mysterious question of what if our thoughts start somewhere and run like signals through wires. Amanda's words make James confused, and thinks that there is something wrong with the kid. When James arrives at his house, he dreams of his dead wife and child. He often takes antidepressants to fight anxiety and depression. On the first day, Nora, James' ex-girlfriend, calls her daughter Amanda to come down for breakfast. However, Amanda is missing. James also comes to find and investigate Amanda's whereabouts by calling the police. While checking the bathroom, James notices a bloodstain on the sink glass that reads, "The empty man made me do it." While talking to Nora, James finds a small piece of paper that says Pontiflex Institute, and behind it is the word tulpa tucked into Amanda's notebook. James goes to Amanda's school and meets her friend Devara Walsh to find out where Amanda is. James records their conversation and finally asks her about the empty man. She shares that if someone goes to a bridge at night and blows into an empty bottle while thinking about him, something will happen. Additionally, she has done it with Amanda and the rest of her friends on the bridge one night. At that time, Amanda said that on the first night they will hear the empty man and will keep thinking about him. On the second night the empty man will appear and follow them. On the third night the empty man finds them. Hearing Amanda's words made her friends feel challenged and wanted to do it. One by one they blew into the empty bottle and closed it, with Amanda blowing into it by sitting cross-legged while calling the empty man over and over. Gradually, they began to feel that someone was behind the darkness of the bridge and heard the sound of a bottle blowing. The sound got closer and closer until they ran away. The last time Devara saw Amanda was in the mall when Amanda was whispering something into Brandon's ear, their other friend. When Devara looked outside, the surroundings suddenly became quiet, then saw her friend sitting cross-legged facing her. After telling the story, Devara decides to go and gives James Brandon's address. After that, James goes to Brandon's house and all of Amanda's friends, who disappear too. Surprisingly, James instead finds a dog carcass and blood in an open can. Then, James comes to the bridge that Devara told. There, James finds an empty bottle and blows into it, and throws the bottle away. James also inspects a hole on the bridge. There, he sees Amanda's friend's body hanging and sees the writing that is the same as in Amanda's room: "The empty man made me do it." In the evening, the cop comes to the bridge to evacuate the bodies. On the other hand, Devara, who is still alive, enters the sauna room to relax. When the hot steam has risen, a sinister black creature appears. It strangles and stabs her in the face with scissors until she dies. However, after some inspection, the police conclude that Devara did it to herself. At the police station, James is informed that Devara has died an unnatural death. Arriving home, James looks into the Pontifex Institute on Google, which has been established since 1956. James also finds information that there have been incidents of deaths in a satanic cult, because of their failed experiments. James finds out that tulpa means creating an artificial body of mind, which is believed to be the embodiment of the mind's manifestation. Shortly after, Nora comes with food for him. While preparing the dish, Nora suddenly cries because she remembers Amanda, who is still missing. As James sleeps, he dreams something weird about his wife and child on vacation in a park. Then, James wakes up and hears a strange sound. When James looks under the door, there is a shadow and the sound of someone's footsteps passing through the door of his room. While carrying a baseball bat, James checks the outside, but can't find anyone. On the second day of the investigation, James decides to go to the Pontifex Institute. There, he is greeted by a receptionist and asked to fill out a questionnaire with strange questions. Then, he walks into the hall and listens to their unnatural teaching from the empty man. Nothing is lost in this life, everything is complete in each person. The preacher also says there is no division or debate between right and wrong, everything is one. The empty man wants to invite everyone to discover the true face of the world. Upon hearing that, everyone claps their hands and some even stomp their feet energetically. Out of curiosity, James approaches the preacher and asks about the empty man. He explains that the empty man is the manifestation of many believers' thoughts, by focusing their mind on a single target. The preacher says he is glad James is back and he hopes James will stay longer this time, even though it is James' first time in the cult. Later, James walks into a room where there is a group of bald people sitting cross-legged, looking at the black cardboard in front of them. He continues his inspection and finds a group of people who are performing the ritual of summoning the empty man. James is caught spying on them, and he is chased out by the officers from the premises. Outside, James meets a young man who has met Amanda before. He says Amanda has been transferred to the Camp Pontifex in the woods because she has been promoted. Hearing this, without further ado, James goes to the camp. He sneaks into the cult's library and finds some files belonging to Amanda and her friends. Surprisingly, he also finds a file on his name, but without any content. Additionally, he finds a cassette with the title Manifestation 13, which has very bizarre content. Several believers are conducting some kind of mind transfer experiment on someone, but it fails and makes the person crazy. Not knowing what to do, James reports to the police station while giving the files he brought. However, James is instead accused of entering people's territory and taking these files without permission. Feeling that he has to rely on himself, James arms himself and goes to Nora's house to protect her. He invites Nora to a motel and has some flashbacks regarding their relationship when they were still together. Upon sleeping, James wakes up from having the same nightmare as usual, seeing his child and wife die in an accident. Suddenly, James sees a scary black figure approaching him. However, that figure quickly disappears. The day after, James visits the Pontifex Institute and observes the cult youths. They go to a hospital ICU and visit a man in critical condition. Surprisingly, the youths kneel and worship him. On the side of the road, James kidnaps one of the young boys who is walking alone and interrogates him. The young boy shares that the man is a prophet who gives manifestations. Likened to a television, the old man acts as an antenna and then transmits a signal to those who worship him. Because James is fed up with the young man's boasting, he punches his face. Night comes, and James goes to the Pontifex Institute again and inspects the file, namely Manifestation 14. There is a photo of the man who was in the ICU earlier, and there is also a file with his name. Inside the file, he finds complete information about himself, his wife, and his son. Moreover, he finds a photo of him sitting naked even though he never remembered any of it. Later, James returns to the hospital and asks the nurse for information on the man in the ICU. The nurse says that the patient has no identity and has been there for almost a year. The patient is in a coma for 23 years and has moved to various hospitals. When James sees him, he sees Amanda visiting and taking care of him. Then, James walks up to him and asks who he is. Amanda replies that she doesn't know the man's name, but Amanda considers him a signal carrier that can transmit, and she is the one who receives it. When James tries to contact Nora to tell her that Amanda has been found, Nora doesn't even recognize him at all. It is revealed that the man in the ICU is Paul, the man at the beginning of the story. However, Paul no longer has control over his body, but the empty man is. Moreover, Amanda explains that they are looking for a replacement for the body as soon as possible, because Paul is no longer compatible and is dying. The new replacement must be a man who is still in good health, has no belief in God, has no attachment to anyone, and has an empty soul. Turns out, James is actually the best candidate for the replacement. All of his life has been a lie, orchestrated by the cult's followers. He once was a follower too, but got expelled to be groomed as the new vessel for the empty man. He lived a peaceful life with his wife and son, but both of them died in an accident caused by his son. However, the cult makes him believe that he is the cause of their deaths, to make him grieve more. As more sadness fills James, he becomes a much more suitable vessel for the empty man. In addition, he is also led to believe that he once had an affair with Nora when her husband died, to make him feel more guilty. Overflowing with frustration and confusion of what's real and what's not, James finally lowers his guard down and lets the empty man take control over him. At the end of the story, James enters Paul's room and shoots him many times in the head. As he comes out of there, all of the followers fall silent and bow down to worship him. That's because James is now the empty man and ready to lead the heretical sect. Subscribe to watch more videos like this, turn on notifications, and leave a like and comment to help the channel out. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.